everyone. This will be the last of my first set of pre-filmed videos. That's probably how I'll do videos, period. So, if you're here watching this, you either clicked on it by accident, clicked on it because of the title, or you actually watched the first two, in which case, surprised you're still with us. I realized in my second video that it was the first one I filmed, and I had it, like, the camera tilted, and I am so sorry. I did not realize that was not going to format properly, so the second two videos we've tilted. Because I am filming this on my phone, because the Google Pixel has a really good camera, so I'm cheap, so I don't buy regular cameras. Anyways, with that really long opening spiel, let's get on to the topic today, which is a lit discussion. And by lit, I mean literature. Sorry. We're going to talk about this. We're also going to talk about the TV show. So, I think the main thing I want to address, just to, for the record, I don't like this cover particularly. I messed this book up though. What version? Which one is this one from? I'm so curious now. Because I'm just looking at it and I'm like, I hate the way Crowley and Aziraphale like look on this cover. It's a choice, that's for sure. Oh, this was like the 2006. That tells you how long I've had this book for. I hate the way they look on it. Let's just say David Tennant and Michael Sheen are like much better options. Toast, could you not do that, please? For any of you who don't know, Toast is my cat. Her name is Burnt Toast. So I wanted to talk about it because I feel like there's a lot of discourse going around, specifically on Tumblr, but it's been very for or against the show, but you're either like on one side of the fence or the other. There's really no like in-between stance on this issue. And that like you either loved it or you were wrong in a lot of cases. And I don't necessarily think that should be the case. I think the TV show is fantastically well done, and I think to people who have just watched the show and not read the book, they don't understand how much we were actually given in the show, because like comparatively we got given a lot of extra stuff, including, try not to include too many spoilers, but obviously spoiler alert because we're talking about the whole thing. Comparatively, the whole last episode is, I mean, you get I'll just say the trial scene. It's not in the book. So like, as somebody who had read the book first, to see that scene blew my mind. I was not expecting it. I was like, oh, they're gonna die. They're gonna die. I was not happy. And then I was real happy. So it's fine. But I've seen a lot of discussions about, is it a love story? Is Neil Gaiman like backpedaling on things? Is he not telling us like what we want to hear? Is he queer baiting? A lot of stuff like that, which I think is I'm gonna come off for a second here like I'm on one side of the fence, and then I'm gonna explain why I kind of choose that defense and why I think it's important. But I want to say first that Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman have always approached Good Omens as a love story before the show came out. They were very clear that if we wanted to headcanon Crowley and Aziraphale as queer, we were allowed to. The only thing that they said about it was they're not gay because they're not men. Which is the same as like, I have trouble calling myself a lesbian because I'm gender fluid. And so it's the same thing. Can I technically call myself a lesbian because I'm gender fluid? Well, the answer is no. I can't. I can use that term when it applies to me when I'm feeling like a woman, but when I'm feeling like a man, lesbian doesn't apply to me anymore. But that was what they consistently said even before the TV show came out. And I feel like a lot of people now, with the TV show having come out, are saying, well, Gaiman should have just said that they're gay. And the thing is, we're taking representation away when we do that. Because we already have, like, it's already been known as a love story for so long. I mean, like I said, I got this in 2006, so I would have been, like, I maybe bought this after 2006 at like a used bookstore, but I couldn't have been more than like 11 or 12 at the time. Like, it couldn't have been more, like, it would have had to have been at least 12 years ago. It was quite a while ago. And for someone who was young and queer, this was fantastic because nobody came out and said it was gay, so I could read it. I grew up in a very conservative Christian area, very conservative Christian household, very conservative Christian town. You weren't allowed to do that. This I could carry around. It was the first queer love story where I didn't have to worry because it wasn't marketed as gay. And sometimes I think we need that because it's important for closeted queer kids to be able to access media, access representation without it automatically being denied to them because, well, it's gay. Because people know. You know? Sometimes that subtlety is the better approach. Sometimes it really is. But we're also taking to say that Carly and Aziraphale are just a love story is also taking away representation from people who are gender fluid, people who are trans, situations like that. And they did a very good job of adding more representation in Good Omens. So you could argue that by adding more representation via, let's say, Michael, Beelzebub, Uriel, like those characters, then we can give up the representation of Crowley and Aziraphale. But Crowley and Aziraphale, for gender fluid kids like myself, have been representation for so long. Although, to be fair, my dirty secret, I did not realize that Crowley was Nanny Ashtoreth and Aziraphale was Brother Francis until I reread this for the second time. I thought they were two completely random people that like Crowley and Aziraphale picked out to do these jobs. And I was just like, I was so confused. But to be fair, I was like 11, so like, don't roast me for that, please. So, I have a problem with people who argue that like gay men should have just come out and said they were gay, because that's never been the case, and it never will be the case. If you're writing, drawing, talking about them as men, you can use that term for them at that instance, but it doesn't describe them, and it never will, if that makes sense. And I know it's gonna piss some people off, but like I feel like I just explained why I feel like that's the case. Not a lot of people. I've seen it argued that, well, we should never ever use labels for them, and I don't think that's appropriate either, because I think, well, let me explain it this way. Queer literature and queer lit reading is it's kind of a new thing in academia. It's very, very young, very new. We're still exploring how we do it. And myself, as a future academic, as somebody who's graduating with a bachelor's in English lit, my specialty has been queer literature for the past 3 years, and it is something where you have to be very careful because the terminology isn't all there yet. It's young. It's really younger than feminist readings. And we still don't have all the terminology for that. That's still changing on an almost daily basis, really, if you think about it. So, it's not, we need to be able to use labels to some degree, and we do that a lot in queer literature from my point of view, because we need to be able to explain things. Labels mean certain things, and when we use those labels, we're getting across that thing without having to describe it all at length. Which, like, obviously, especially when you're writing a paper, you don't want to have to explain what two men who love each other do every single time. You just call them gay. You're done. Or you call them homosexual. Things like that. So labels are good. Labels can be useful. And I think in certain instances, gay has also become a bit of an overarching term for the community, which I understand. I know some people hate using it as an overarching term for themselves, which is totally fair. Some people really dislike using queer. I use queer for a reason. I use queer not even because I feel more comfortable because it used to be a slur and we're taking it back or anything. I use it because that's what gets used in academia. Especially in literature and in history, in academia, queer is the word that gets used, because it is all-encompassing and it can't be confused. To call something gay as an all-encompassing term can be confused with gay, the specific term. At the same time, to use LGBT plus is, the problem is some scholars debate what should be included in the plus, and I hate that. And people on social media do it. People in the real world debate what should be in LGBTQIA. And I think it should be everything, personally, but it's debated. So if you use that acronym, also you're not really supposed to use that many acronyms in like literature writing. I don't know about history writing so much, because I just avoid them in general. But you're not really supposed to use acronyms when you're using literature writing. You're supposed to like use your words, you know? So like labels are a good thing. That's why we use the word queer. That's why I use the word queer. Because it is the professional term, I should say. It's the professional term, as it were. So I think in certain instances those labels can be useful to look at Crowley and Aziraphale, call them gender fluid, to call them non-binary, to call them gay, to call them lesbian, depending on how they're presenting at the time. Because like I personally, if I'm presenting feminine, will call myself a lesbian. I'm somewhat interested in men, but not really. Like it's one of those, like, I'm interested in fictional men and that celebrity and that one dude who smiled at me in 2007. Like it's that kind of like my sexuality. So generally I call myself a lesbian because I'm usually only interested in women, but that's only when I'm presenting female. So to call them to call them a lesbian when they're lesbians when they're presenting female, or to call them gay when they're presenting as men, can be appropriate for that situation, but it also doesn't have to be used, if that makes sense. So I think that that's an argument that we have to be careful of, that we're not taking representation away from each other, and that we're also not using labels incorrectly. And we're not hounding on people for labels either, because labels need to be used. That's the point of having them. As cool as it would just be to be like, there are no labels, sexuality and gender are open now. It doesn't exist that way. It really doesn't. In regards to Gaiman kind of being anti-J.K. Rowling, I think a lot of people are taking for granted the fact that he does that. And I think a lot of people are misunderstanding why he does that as well. I know it's a general practice with him to kind of be relaxed about it, to kind of be like, whatever you guys think, do what you want. Anything I didn't write in the books is not canon. Like, he tends to be like that. But at the same time, I know a lot of Good Omens fans are calling for like, well, just say it was gay, or just say it was this, or just say it's that. Like, give us a label. Y'all have to remember that Terry Pratchett is dead. Rest in peace. He was amazing and fantastic. But the fact of the matter is, we almost didn't get this because Neil Gaiman was fairly open about he didn't feel right about making a movie or anything like that after Terry Pratchett passed away. We're very lucky we got this, because when Terry Pratchett passed away, anybody who's read the books, we were basically all like, oh, we're not getting a movie. We're not getting a TV show or anything like that, because we really didn't think he would do it without Terry Pratchett. And I guess maybe they had been working on this beforehand. I've heard something about that they were kind of working on this before he passed away and getting ready for it. So Gaiman felt okay, like, continuing it. But we were all really, like, oh, that's it then. And so it would be very rude, I think, in my personal opinion, for Gaiman to start saying this or that or the other thing about the characters or about the plot without Pratchett around. I think it's disrespectful to his memory. I think it's disrespectful to what he put into Good Omens. And I think it's disrespectful to what he put into the characters and into the plot, really. Because for Gaiman to come out and say, this is stuff that we didn't write into the book, but it is now canon, it is part of it, this is it. Pratchett never got a say in that, unless he proved to us that Pratchett did say it, which I highly doubt, because Pratchett kind of had a hands-off territory, like, way, like, about fandom as far as I'm aware. Like, he wasn't really that, like, oh, this is a fan theory and I'm going to confirm or deny it kind of thing. He wasn't, I don't think either of them really were like that. And so I don't think it would be fair to Pratchett's memory to go around stating things like that. I think it's, where's it going? I think it does a disservice to fans too. And I'm not saying everybody has to be like a lit major who's like interested in this stuff, really going for it kind of thing. That's not the case. What I think is that it's important for people who are reading things and watching things and devouring media to have a critical eye and to be able to decode things and be able to read into things, because that's the basis for watching any media, reading any media, doing any of that. And I know there's a trend toward intellectualism now, where it's like, well, unless you're an English major, you shouldn't have to do that. And on one hand, you can enjoy media just for the sake of enjoying it. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think if you're looking for something like, sorry, I have something on it. I think I fixed that. If you're looking for something like a queer coding, or I say queer coding, not queer baiting. Queer coding and queer baiting are two separate things. We're going to get into that real quick. Queer baiting is when creators purposefully make tensions between two characters seem like a queer romance, or have somebody display queer characteristics and then not follow through on it. Queer coding is when somebody is subtly coded that way and you can completely read into it and it's never denied. The idea with queer baiting is that it is always denied. So it'll be because you're being baited, so you're grabbing onto it, and then every single time you're not quite getting the carrot, Queer coding is the subtlety of it. The best instance I can think is look at a lot of Shakespeare's plays are queer coded, and you couldn't openly write about queer characters at the time, obviously, but we're pretty sure Shakespeare himself was bisexual, so it makes sense that a lot of his characters are queer coded because it's representation. It's probably what he was living and what he wanted to see. So there's a difference between queer coding and queer baiting, just to clear that up for anybody who's confused. I think though, if you are looking for things like queer coded stories, not queer baited, queer coded stories, you should have the critical thinking skills to look for them. You shouldn't need the creator to tell you that this is queer, that's queer, this is, that person's a minority and I just never said it. We get into J.K. Rowling territory again, and look at how that goes, We can't depend on creators to tell us everything. That's not the point of literature. That's not the point of TV shows. That's not the point of any sort of entertainment or media. They don't tell us everything. Whether you want to look for everything or not is your own choice. If you don't want to look for anything, that's fine. But if you want to be looking for these things, you have to have some critical thinking skills about it. So it does us a disservice when creators just, do you guys think that character's queer? They're queer now. It does you a disservice because it is taking away the ability for critical thinking from everybody else. They're not getting the chance to do that. So one person did it, and then, usually several people did it, and then it got, the creator was like, oh yeah, that's acceptable. I like that one. That's canon now. Nobody else gets to give their interpretation of it, which isn't fair when the canon of the book doesn't tell you that. And then we get into issues in fandom where it's this fandom idea or this canon idea is law, and you cannot go around it when you're writing fanfic or creating fan art and stuff like that, which I think is ridiculous. There are definitely some things in fanfic and fan art and stuff that's just squicky. It's squicky. I call it squicky. There's stuff that's gross, and then there's stuff that's squicky. Stuff that's gross is stuff that's morally incorrect and stuff like that. Stuff that's squicky is stuff that you're personally uncomfortable with, but it's not really that bad. It's just stuff that you don't like reading, you don't like looking at, kind of thing. If you see a guy and a girl paired together and they're not pedophilic or anything like that, but if it's a reasonable pairing that you just don't like, that's squicky. And I think we should go back to using that term, to be honest, because I think we're getting into the point where again, it comes back to this fandom rule, or this fanon theory, or this canon thing that the author said later is law, and I think we can't do that. I think that's, the whole field of literature would be gone. Think about it. We've spent years and years and years discussing what the meaning of Romeo and Juliet is. we've spent years and years and years discussing what the meaning of any type of literature is, that's my whole field up in flames if you start doing that. And like, I understand that like you don't have to read, you don't have to agree with what other people's interpretations of canon and fanon and like all of that is, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can stop people, that you can tell people that they're wrong, because they're not, unless it's morally wrong, you know. So I think asking creators to do that gives us a disservice and gets us into very very worrisome territory. And I actually think that's something that the Good Omens fandom has done quite well. Is, well, yes, the creator said this, but I still like it better this way, you know? Because in part, now the TV show is a part of canon. And in making it part of canon, that means that most people are going to look at Aziraphale and Crowley and they're going to see David Tennant and Michael Sheen, who I think were great choices. I think they did a fantastic job. I love the way they look. I think they embodied the characters perfectly. I know there was issues with the red hair. We're not going to get into that. But there's a lot of fan creators out there who are sticking to the way that they interpreted like Aziraphale and Crowley, especially because like with Crowley, like the whole, okay, we are getting into the red hair issue, I guess. The issue with the red hair was like, well, it said it was dark. Nobody said it was red. They just said it was dark. So a lot of people interpreted that to mean black or dark brown hair that he had, right? And then to see red, we were all just like, oh. But a lot of fan creators are like, I'm gonna do some pieces with like redhead Crowley, and I'm gonna do some pieces with like my original Crowley, who had like black or brown hair. One of them I follow, Trio Tile. I don't know. I'll link them down below. They're a Tumblr artist whom I love their Good Omens stuff. They still stick to some of their original Good Omens interpretations, and I love that because their Crowley was one of the first that I fell in love with. I love the way they do Aziraphale. I love the way they do like David Tennant Crowley, David Tennant, or Aziraphale. David Tennant Crowley, Michael Sheen Aziraphale. I love the way that they draw them, but I also love their original interpretations, and I think that we in general need to approach the whole fandom like that, in that, you know, there were some people are allowed to make their own assumptions about things that aren't said in canon, and that we're allowed to kind of play around with it. It's our sandbox now. It's been handed out to us. They gave us the book, they gave us the TV show, and now we get to play in the sandbox. And I think that Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett before that, and the actors, Michael Sheen especially, have made it very clear that they are very open to us playing in their sandbox, you know? So yeah, I just think we have to be careful about what we're asking for in that sense. I also want to talk about the extended representation in Good Omens. And I noticed this has been talked about a little bit, so I want to talk about it, the feminist aspect of it as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Michael and Uriel. And probably specifically Nanny Ashtoreth too, because that one is really important to me. So with Michael and Uriel, of course, it's two traditionally male angels, male names played by female actresses. The names aren't changed and we're never given pronouns. I know, I'll get into Beelzebub in a minute, who I'm going to use they, them pronouns for, because I'm not really sure. We'll get into that for a second. Michael and Uriel, though, I think are extremely important because Michael's a traditionally masculine name. We're never really given pronouns for Michael. I don't even think Aziraphale uses them. I think he just says Michael's a stickler. And I think that's it. I don't think anybody uses pronouns for Mike. Well, no, Crowley says dude, which is technically a masculine pronoun. Or Aziraphale as Crowley, spoiler alert, says dude, which is a traditionally masculine pronoun, but at the same time we don't really use it as a masculine pronoun anymore. So take that as you will. For me, that representation is very important because I am somebody who's gender fluid and I present and look feminine, but I have a traditionally masculine name. And that's the name that I like and have chosen and continue to go by. And I'm not too picky about pronouns. I'll take she, her, I'll take he, him. I'm good with it. It depends on how people see me and how they want to address me. And I'm okay with that. So for me, actually, Michael is very important representation for me, as is Uriel. But Uriel gets considerably less, I think, attention just because he or she is a more minor character. But it's important. And same with Dagon, too. Dagon gets, I think, she, her pronouns at some point. I could be incorrect on that, don't quote me. But again, Dagon is generally when we look at these characters and stuff, we would traditionally make them masculine. Demons and angels, especially. So I'm going to talk about Nanny Ashtoreth for a second in that vein. I know some people, and me as well, have made a little bit fun of like some of the scenes with Nanny Ashtoreth. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. The lullaby scene, for instance, which, no joke, David Tennant's singing voice is really quite good. I'm not mad about it. I'm really not. But, you know, we make fun of it because Nanny Ashtoreth is kind of an out there character. It's like Mary Poppins on demonic steroids. But I'm so here for it. I'm a little into it. But, and she looks so severe. She looks so kind of out there. You almost don't want to take her seriously, but that's the whole point, is that you're still taking her seriously even though she's a joke. Like, she's humorous. That's the whole point of her character, is to be funny, because Crowley's an idiot. I love him, but he's so stupid that he thought that was a good idea. But at the same time, like, that's how he chooses his gender presentation. That's how he chooses to look. That's what he chooses to be in that instance. Okay, fabulous. I had to stop in the middle of this because my phone overheated, so that was fun. Where was I? That's what he chooses in that instance, and I think it's important to respect that that's what he thinks, that's what he likes, because there's so many options that Crowley could have taken. There's so many options that Aziraphale could have taken. I mean, they can change how they look, whenever they want, kind of thing, you know? And that's what they want to look like. So, I think Nanny Ashtoreth is actually a very important representation as far as it goes, because it's also... Okay, in case anyone's wondering what that, like, break with the editing was and what all that happened there, my camera fell over. It's because I have, like, a wax setup right now. Or was I? Oh, Nanny Ashtoreth, yes. I think it's important that she's funny, that she's kind of a humorous person and a humorous character. Not that she's necessarily trying to be funny, but that, like, she's kind of funny as a character, because I think a lot of times we feel we have to take queer characters very seriously for them to be taken as queer. And the fact of the matter is, with both Crowley and Aziraphale, they're not serious characters. There are serious aspects to them, and there's things we can take seriously about them. Crowley's breakdown, for one. But at the end of the day, they're not. Very stupid, and I love them, but they're fun characters. They're funny, and we don't get to see that with queer characters very often. We get to see serious, sad storylines with queer characters, and this was a happy storyline at the end of the day. This was a happy storyline that was very funny, and a lot of times queer characters in funny stories get reduced to stereotypes, and that simply wasn't the case here. Crowley and Aziraphale both get to be extremely funny and extremely ridiculous, but they're never reduced to stereotypes. Even Crowley as Nanny Ashtoreth, it's a little bit of a Mary Poppins stereotype, yes, but it's still a fully developed character. I mean, if you look at places like Tumblr, the amount of like things that popped up around her and popped up discussing her and that sort of thing, like, it's just incredible. And it's because it's something we haven't seen in quite some time. I mean, I know there are movies and lit around that are funny and queer, but it's not as common. It really isn't. And I think I'm going to take a minute here to discuss Beelzebub. I'm going to use they, them pronouns for Beelzebub. I've seen people say that Gaiman said that his headcanon for it was Zezer, and that they've used like rotating pronouns, different pronouns in the script versus in the books and stuff. So I'm going to stick with they, them, because I haven't read all of them. I haven't checked my sources on that, and I know Gaiman tends to take things as like, well, I wrote it, and everything I say after this is kind of my headcanon for it, but you guys can do whatever you want. Like, he's very much the anti-J.K. Rowling, which I appreciate. I'm going to talk about Beelzebub, and I think I'm going to talk about Dagon a little bit. I'm actually going to kind of include Dagon a little bit later, because I kind of discussed Dagon earlier, and I'm gonna come back to her. So Beelzebub, I explained that I'm using they them pronouns, and why. And so with Beelzebub, I don't know. I saw Beelzebub, and the first time I saw them, I was like, and in a good way, because I was so excited, because Beelzebub was always displayed as a man, always displayed as masculine for the most part, like in media, and here we had Beelzebub, played by a female actor, not given pronouns, called by Lord, not Lady, or Prince, or whatever it is, so consistently male terms, no pronouns used, not a single flying anything given towards like gender presentation. Like, I'm sorry, the whole outfit was just like a win for me. Like the fly hat and like the fishnet socks, the fucking anklet fishnet socks, they're disgusting. I love them. I would buy a pair, but like I feel like that's like the number one way to just like get blisters. It seems like a bad idea. Anyways, but that whole outfit, their whole outfit is very like gender neutral, very gender non-conforming essentially, and they never give anything away. There's never any like, no, I'm a woman, no, I'm a man. There's none of that. They let people kind of assume what they want and just continue on their way, and we never ever actually see anybody's assumptions, but like that's how it feels, you know? And I just really appreciate that, because we like gay and lesbian media are starting to pick up. They are. We're starting to get a little bit more of that. What we don't get is a lot of gender non-conforming, non-binary, gender fluid, transgender a little bit more, but like we don't get a lot of that representation yet, and this was fantastic. Especially because Beelzebub is in such a high position. I know this is hell and like they're demons and like we technically shouldn't like be looking towards them for like representation or like good people to like follow the ideas of whatever. Hell exists, I'm probably going there anyways, it's fine. Like they're in such a high position despite being non-binary, gender non-conforming, or whatever you want to use. They're in such a high position, they hold so much power, people are clearly afraid of them, and they just don't care. And it's never discussed, it's never brought up, and they're never undermined for that, which I think is so important, and I think it was fantastic to see. And I think this is going to be my last and final point, because this is getting kind of long. I'm going to try to edit this down to about a half hour, we'll see. I want to discuss feminism and the feminine or gender non-conforming demons. So Dagon and Beelzebub for the most part. I use she, her pronouns for Dagon because that's the most that I've seen, and Dagon presents fairly feminine, so it's an assumption that I'm making, but like feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. If anybody has like, no, it's used different in the script or something, in which case like please let me know, because I didn't see it, I'm not sure. So here's my thing. This has been discussed a few times. The Beelzebub and Dagon, as well as all the other demons, but I'm going to focus on Beelzebub and Dagon here. They're disgusting. They look disgusting. And I talked about Beelzebub's uniform, how it's very gender non-conforming, kind of ridiculous, and I love it. Both of them, like, Dagon is, I mean, prosthetic makeup obviously aside, but like, there's no pretty makeup, there's no, like, looking lusty. She's wearing this big puffy thing that I don't know what it looks like. It kind of looks like eels, which I think was the point. It's maybe, I think she's got pants. I think she's got pants and like a tunic kind of thing going on. It's very loose. There's no like tight to the boobs or anything like that. There's none of that. There's no sexualization. And it's the same with Beelzebub. Like I already talked about, Beelzebub's whole uniform is very gender non-conforming, very like androgynous, right? And besides just what they wear, they look gross. And I love it. Beelzebub has boils all over their face, which is fantastic. Not really, but like fantastic. And Dagon is covered in scales and these sharp-ass teeth that are scary. Beelzebub is surrounded by flies. Like, they're just allowed to be disgusting. And it's funny because actually Crowley is the prettiest one in hell, which I am actually taking to kind of. I thought about this, and maybe I'll discuss this in a minute. I'll leave my second last point. They're just allowed to be disgusting. They're like, we're in hell and it sucks. So, yeah, everything's gross. There's no, like, succubus, incubus, like, sexy demon lady thing, which I find, like, even Supernatural, where everything was very grimdark, very gritty, very dirty, very leather and, like, plaid and stuff, and yes, I watched it. Even the female demons there were meant to be, like, at least a little bit sexy, and they were often love interests. Beelzebub and Dagon are just allowed to be gross. And I love that. I love that they're allowed to be gross. I think that's such good representation. I say this as somebody who, like, is running a kind of beauty channel and stuff, but at the same time, like, it's kind of inspiring for anybody who presents feminine to just kind of, like, wander around looking how they want to look. Like, I can look like this, I can take all my makeup off, I could wear half of it, I could do whatever I want. Like, that's how it makes me feel. Is that I can just look how I look. I can just look any way I want to look. And that's okay. It's acceptable. And you can still have power and be respected and be important and be efficient and good at your job and all those other things. You're allowed to be that, looking however you want to look. I think that's extremely important. I'm going to quickly touch on, promise my very last point, Crowley. Being the prettiest one in hell. Everybody says Lagur is very pretty. I agree, but I think Crowley is the most well-dressed, most polished, cleanest, best looking in hell. I also think he's handsome. I'm not gonna lie. And I think that's important to Crowley's character, but it also shows off just how much more the gender non-conforming and the feminine demons down there get to just be disgusting, because he cares about his appearance. It's made very clear throughout the book and throughout the movie and the TV shows, and stuff. And so he takes care of it. He looks appropriate at all times. He looks fancy. He looks clean. And he takes great care to be that, because that's what he wants to look like. But he's also not that well respected in hell. Not extremely well respected. And part of it is because he does look clean. Whereas, like, Beelzebub and Dagon are disgusting, and they're well respected. So it's kind of funny, and I think it subtly reinforces that point that, like, yeah, you can look however you want to look, and have that position of power, and be respected, and be important, you know? So yeah, I think that was really all I wanted to say. I didn't really want to go into specifics about the book. I mean, I could do that sometime if somebody wanted me to go into, like, my specific thoughts on the book, like what my favorite parts are, that kind of thing. But I kind of wanted to discuss the queer theory that would go into reading and watching this, and what I think it means for queer people, what I think it means in a feminist sense, which I kind of only briefly touched on with, like, Dagon and Beelzebub, but still, and kind of why we have to be, and I guess critical reading skills there as well, you know? But yeah, I think that's it. So, have a nice day. I don't know whether anyone's going to watch this because it's such a niche subject, but if you do, I hope you enjoyed it. If you have something to say it in the comments, because I'd love to hear other people's opinions on it. I'd love to hear people add to it. I'd love to start a discussion on this. I think it's a fascinating subject, and I think Good Omens is just such a good representation of go with queer literature, how to read queer literature, and that sort of thing. And if anybody has any ideas for literature that they'd like to see me discuss via queer or feminist or gender readings, by which I mean, like, reading them through those kind of theories and practices, please go ahead and let me know, and if I can make time to either read it or have read it and would like to talk about it, I'll hopefully be able to do that. So have a nice night.